Get strong.
Hey there, friend. Okay, a question for you. Do you ever just get this wave of sadness? And I look like I'm going to cry. I look like I have been crying. Actually, my eye got irritated. I'll just use that excuse. Asking for a friend who gets sad sometimes, right? So, do you ever just get sad and you get this wave of sadness and it's like you don't even know why? Like you don't know why. All of a sudden your mood just changes and you just feel this heaviness, you feel sadness, and you're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. What's my deal? Like I was fine a couple hours ago, and right now I'm just like so depressed. So here's one thing that I have found that it works for me, and I think it may work for you too. And one thing you should never do, never, ever, ever, and this is what most people do. I'll tell you about that in just a second, but please do not do this. But one thing you should do is I take it as a cue whenever I feel sad and I don't know why. Like sometimes you know why, like, wow, that comment really hurt me, or seeing that made me really sad, or, you know, something that you know of and it makes sense, right? Okay, I should feel sad. Like that's okay to feel sad. But sometimes it's like, oh my God, I just so sad. One thing you can do, and this is what I do, is I go in reverse. So let me explain this. And I help my clients do this too, is go in reverse. And if you can think, what was the thought I had that immediately preceded the sadness? Like really kind of like get into detective mode and say, instead of being like, oh my God, I'm sad now, start looking at it like you're a detective and say, okay, let me go backward. What was the thought I was holding? What was the thing that happened? What went on in my head? Because emotions are just really a manifestation of whatever thought we hold in our head. Okay? And you can say, well, it's hormonal, but still sometimes those hormones can produce thoughts in your head which create sadness. So go back and say, what was the thought I was holding in my head immediately before I felt this way? And sometimes it'll make sense, like, oh, I was thinking about that bill I had to pay, or I was thinking about my my kid leaving for college, or I was thinking about not, being able to see my parents or something like that. Like, and then it starts to make sense, and then you can work through those thoughts. But you've got to go in reverse. Go in reverse and figure out what was the thought I was holding, what happened immediately before, what went on in my head to produce this emotion. And if you can nail down that thought, then you can do some thought work around it. Then you can say, okay, well, is that true? Or are there better options? Or what can be something productive that comes out of this, right? You have all those options. You have things you can work with. Now, this is one thing you should never do. Whenever you feel sad and you don't know why, I look like I'm about to cry. I promise this is allergies. It's okay. You don't have to believe me. I do cry, I promise. But this was allergies. Maybe. But one thing you should never ever do, and this is actually what most people do, is when that sadness happens, when they feel the sadness, they respond to it. Instead of going backwards and saying, what was my thought? They go forward and they assume the identity, right? They assume that identity. If you Google feel sad and don't know why, you will get all the ads for depression clinics or depression meds or stuff like that. People have a tendency to move forward and say, that's my identity now. I am sad. There's so much power in the words I am. That's why God referred to himself as I am. There is power in what you identify with. So if you say, I am sad, you become that identity. And this is what most people do. They assume the identity of sadness and depression, and then they just move forward into that emotion, into that identity. They start to assume that identity. And then all of a sudden, what happens? You get more and more and more sad. Your energy gets lower and lower and lower. You start to retreat. You start to pull in. You start to isolate, which is what happens with depression. And so I want to just recommend that you do not immediately go to assuming that identity. Feeling sad does not make you a sad person. It is a feeling. And if you can see it as a feeling, then you can have grace with yourself and say, you know what? It doesn't mean like I'm depressed or I am sad. It means I am holding this feeling in my body right now. It just means I have a physical response to a thought. And I can have grace with myself, and I can have mercy with myself, and I can love myself right now. And it's not that you have to pull out of that sadness. It's not that you have to distract yourself from the sadness. And it's not that you have to be consumed with the sadness. You can get this objective opinion, almost like, don't think I'm like woo-woo and weird, but pull out of your body and just kind of see your emotion more objectively. Say, oh, it's something that I'm currently experiencing. It's a feeling that's currently in my body. I am feeling this way. This is not my permanent residency. This is just something I'm passing through. But I can have grace with myself, and I can nurture myself right here in this process. Not that I'm going to be consumed by it, but I can have grace with myself. So you can feel sad without being depressed. Did you know that? You can just have that feeling and develop more of a curiosity, but don't assume the identity. That's what people do. They're like, oh, I am depressed now. I am sad. I am going to respond in all the ways that a depressed or a sad person responds. No, girl, they are just emotions. And guess what? They're your emotions. You take authority over them. You have control over them. You can manage them powerfully and with wisdom. And so when the feeling comes, develop a sense of curiosity. Remember, go backward. As soon as a feeling comes upon you that you may not like, sadness, fear, panic, anxiety, when that feeling happens, go reverse. Go reverse. Develop curiosity. What was I thinking that immediately preceded that? What thought was I holding that immediately preceded that? And then that's where you can do the work. But don't just assume the identity. Remember, you are not mastered by your emotions. You are the master of your emotions. And with any level of mastery, it just comes out of practice. And the more you practice, the more it becomes a habit. So start developing this master practice of managing your thoughts. And remember, emotions are just a manifestation of your thoughts. So develop curiosity. And with that, you can get more and more confident at managing your emotions. You're not subject to your emotions. Think about like a kingdom. A king has subjects, right? A king. So here's the king, right? The king sits on a throne, and then his subjects sit below him or her, queen, and she or he commands the subjects, right? Now, think about that in the regal sense. Think about you walk into this amazing castle, you see the queen on her throne, you see her loyal subjects beneath her, and she bids them do this, she bids them do that, and they do it, right? Because they are her subjects. Now think about this. When you say that you are subject to your emotions, that's saying that you are now below your emotions. You have bowed down to your emotions, and your emotions rule over you. That's not the order it goes in, my friend. You are sitting on the throne. You have mastery. You have dominion. You have authority over your emotions. And you can tell them to go do this, and you can tell them to go do that. And they are subject to you. You're not subject to emotions. They are subject to you. So one thing to do, make sure you do this. Like I want you to hear my voice in your head saying, go reverse, go reverse, go reverse when it comes to your emotions. Get that emotion and go reverse. What was I thinking about immediately before this? And then you can gracefully and with kindness and mercy work through those thoughts. But don't fall subject. Don't fall prey. Don't move into the identity, which is what most people do. They think they have no control, so they're just going to move directly into that identity. But not you, my friend. not you. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to this. That's why God led you for such a time as this, so you can demonstrate what it means to truly rule. You got this. Mwah. I love you so much, my friend. Be blessed like crazy.